Hello. Um, I had attempted to make a video last night, but due to technical complications, I wasn't able to uh, broadcast that on this channel. So what I'm going to try to do is to recapture the material that I was speaking about at that point. Firstly, as a kind of parenthetical uh, notification, I am not convinced that any fruitful ideas for changing the world are even possible to be conveyed, excuse me, via the instrument of YouTube. And the reason I say that is because the media itself is kind of, I would say, corrupted, significantly corrupted by the appeal of a get rich quick scheme. And you have these stories of these so-called influencers. And obviously, the whole game and trick is to try to get some sort of éclat, I don't know, some fleeting sort of 10-minute fame and make your fortune. And it's sad because it's totally has nothing to do with anything other than narcissism. So within that context, if you're trying to get put forward some ideas that are perhaps out of the run of the mill, but as the author yourself, you consider them to be important and communicable, then it's hard for me to use this venue to reach anybody because I don't know if outside of kind of how should I put it? Outside of placating prejudices on political prejudices, economic prejudices, because that's what we were talking about with the get rich quick schemes that have been part of the American tapestry going back to the very beginning. It's like you're within a kind of a vortex of so-called information. And the problem with the characterization of information is it's a total misnomer, and it's something. It's one of the problems that I think are plaguing our society. That everything has got to be short attention span, attuned to short attention spans. Memes, for example, whatever that is. There's another. There's a multitude of such techniques, and it's interesting because it's similar in a certain sense to what happens to empires at their waning stages. And hopefully America will wake up in time not to be an empire in its waning station for example, in ancient Greece, you had this school of hired information, how to debate, sophistry, the sophists. And what Socrates and Plato pointed out is that it had nothing to do with truth. It was all based on the idea of presenting ideas in a palatable form to the prevailing precepts and prejudices of society. And the proof, if you don't do that, either you're pegged as kind of a crackpot and you're carted off into some realm of irrelevancy, or you become a very annoying pest and you need to be swatted, which is what happened to Socrates. It's not, in fact, a accident that Socrates himself labeled himself as a kind of annoying pest that's bringing up these questions that came up within his process of dialogue with his students and with his adversaries. One of the things I was mentioning yesterday was the issue of in Socrates, in the Plato's dialogue, the Symposium, Socrates is confronted by Alcibiades, who is equivalent today of somebody that has a tremendous amount of wealth and power and is using it ruthlessly in order to maintain his own brand. That we've been hearing a lot about these brands recently. The Biden brand, the Trump brand. You know, it's, in fact, if you look at these courses on business these days, you have to have a brand. In fact, you personally have a brand, and you can go on the internet and improve your brand. Again, that goes back to this issue of sophistry. How do you present yourself? Forget whether or not whatever you have to say is true or false. Doesn't matter. Just go with the flow. Present yourself. After all, you'll make some money. You'll have some goodies for yourself, and maybe you can spread a little bit around to your family, whoever, people that do you favors, hangers on. So Alcibiades is a kind of a representative of a frame of mind. And this goes back to my discussion from last night. I'm starting to percolate in my sensorium here what I was speaking about. But Alcibiades characterizes the hunter mentality. And I was speaking about the modes of society that have existed over the millennium that we know about human civilization, pre-civilization, whatever you want to call it. And it was my contention that if you have a society that's very close to the hunting and gathering modality, then that idea of having to hunt, or you could say gather as well, from the so-called bounty of nature, easily, in periods of crisis, easily bleeds into seeing other human beings in that same way as a prey-predator relationship. How the academics qualify it, prey-predator. Really, it goes back to a worldview, and I've never want to call it a philosophy, because philosophy, it seems to me, doesn't comport with this worldview. The worldview, especially characterized, say, by Hobbes, the idea of a war of each against all. And somehow, this war of each against all is supposed to benefit society. Adam Smith, there's a whole, it really is kind of equivalent to an empire mentality that the Roman Empire in particular perfected until the Roman Empire was no more. But the idea that you maintain order through brute force, you're the top predator. Not only you as an individual, but say your organization, your state, your predatory state. So that, again, if you were looking at it from the standpoint of hunting and gathering, well, it's easy to see how under conditions whereby you don't have a adequate supply of food, then all hell breaks loose, so to speak. And we start to cannibalize other hunting, gathering communities, whatever you want to call them. So, although there's an alternative to that conception of humanity, and it is a philosophy, and then I'll use the word philosophy because it's a love of wisdom. And now you can say that's just a word. What do you mean by wisdom? It can mean anything. It can mean magic. That's wisdom. And go like Newton did and study the numbers in some texts, like say the Bible, and try to draw out of those numbers the ultimate truth, the philosopher's stone, esoteric knowledge, secrets that will gain you health and wealth, etc., etc. We know it's the Dr. Dukamara medicine show mentality. I have a secret. I'm sure if you put on the internet, secret, revealed, and kept doing that, day after day, plodding along, sooner or later, and if you came up with some hodgepodge of some hocus pocus and nonsense, sooner or later you would acquire followers, because you say, just follow these simple steps to all-powerful knowledge. This will make you immortal. And that's what you have to go back to. The idea of what is power? What is immortality? In the hunting and gathering mode, what is it that they see as power in that form of organization of society? The powers that you can't control. Storms, things that disrupt your hunting, your gathering, droughts, storms. So the power has to be appeased. We appease the storm god, whether it be Thor, the storm god, or Odin, or Zeus, or whomever the Aztecs were appeasing. I don't know if it was the plumed serpent or somebody else in this place or that place. The so-called autochthonous gods that are close to this idea of every man for himself, lifeboat economics. So what I'm pointing at is there's a thread that's running through the narration of human history, and is the thread of hunting gathering that would have you believe that the nature of human beings is stuck forever in a landscape of hell that we are consigned by our nature as being predators to destroy each other. Because really, if you look at what's going on right now around the world, I mean, people don't want to look at it and they'll do everything to run away, but yet it's in their conscious mind in one way or another. They may pretend that it's not. But these ideas, you can say, these ideas are hard to understand, I don't want to think about them. Let somebody else do it. What does it, how does it really matter to me who am here, day-to-day existence, just trying to eke out some sort of living for myself. And once I'm done with that, then all I have to do is be placated, entertained, whatever, until the next day. And that is the idea of the rat race, pretty much. There's always a new twist on it. Like right now, for example, the rat race is that to get ahead, you have to have a degree in college where you're going to pay through the wazoo and never be able to pay off. But that's what has to be done to placate the powers that be. Maybe, you can strike it rich by some scam we've been talking about a little earlier. But to try to understand and uncover dynamical principles that might underlie an alternative to that bad rat race, bad infinite continuation of sameness, until you don't continue it. For example, you might find yourself in the middle all of a sudden of a battlefield, similar to what happened to hunter and gatherers, but now it's a battlefield, say, of bombs falling on houses and so forth, like we see in so many parts of the world, driven by the powers that be, in a forever war again, this goes back to Hobbes. If you believe that wars are inevitable and will forever and ever be a part of human nature, then you have to do everything you can to prepare for those, build up your defenses, your offenses, make technological breakthroughs in the art of war. The people that chronicle these things love to talk about the art of war. In fact, this idea of warfare itself as being part of institutions and the way that they were formed is kind of another facet of what I spoke about last night. Let's take religion. If religion is kind of a chronicle of war, and that my side, my religion, my belief in almighty power, if I can prove to you that it is superior because it's won wars, and it will continue to win wars, then that really is part and parcel of this mentality, this worldview, this Weltanschauung, as a fancy academic word, of an oligarchy. It is an oligarchical religion. What's power? Power. The power to, if you don't obey the precepts, whether they be rational or irrational, then you will be punished. And you may be punished eternally. So you better get with the program. Now, interesting on that, I was pointing to the idea, well, you can say, yes, the Abrahamic religions talk a lot about warfare. In fact, they carry out warfare. The Old Testament, for example, is nothing but warfare in one way or another. One regime who's a true followers, not just followers, but true tribe, race, whatever you want to call, ethnicity, has a uniqueness from this warrior God. You have power. You can win wars with that power, and you will never be ultimately defeated. Now, that Abrahamic idea of a vengeful God continues, and you can say, well, people will say, well, there was a new dispensation whereby it's not any longer a mere tribe that has this unique relationship with the all-powerful creator being. Yet, it's still a case of warfare, because what's going on is that within that context, what's the narrative that the Christians stood up against the arbitrary powers of the Roman Empire, the powers that be, and said you don't have to obey them, or you can say just act in such a way as to make them believe that you're obeying them when you really aren't. But again, it hinges upon this idea of a temporal power whose power is really, again, forged in warfare, versus a true, all-powerful power that everything emanates from. Now, again, if you look at the Islamic branch of that Abrahamic religion, it's very, very obvious that, again, it was a continuous warfare that brought it about. Jihad, warfare. Now you can look at other religions and you can say, well, maybe there are religions that are contemplative and that are peaceful. And I would argue that the idea of a negation of this principle of warfare itself is still, the idea of, for example, of meditation, where you block out the let's say the noises of the unruliness of day-to-day living, the rat race, go back to that. You block it out, you rise above it. You're in some other plane, some astral plane, and so forth. I would still contend that that's really that kind of idea of negation. It has to have something to be a negation of. And so that's a harsh viewpoint on the ideas of religion, admittedly. But I think as an alternative to this whole agenda that I am trying to explicate here, what you must do is, instead of the hunting and gathering mode of society, you must look at a cooperative society whereby the sustenance and improvement of the conditions of life in the here and now and in the future, for future generations, where that becomes the subject. And if you were to try to deny the validity of that as an alternative to the warrior culture, the warrior class that we're caught up in right now, an existential crisis really for humanity. If you tried to say that, that's all just talk, well, you have to deny a lot of things to believe that, because it is a belief. It flies in the face of the potentiality that strikes us every single day, the way in which we already have made progress for humanity, and the way in which we can clearly envision. It's not mysterious, but we can clearly envision the ways in which we're going to continue to make progress in the hereafter, after our own life is spent. We know that there is left behind a body of knowledge whereby we can accelerate our own well-being into whole new modes, whole new degrees of freedom. Now, I have been trying to present a way in which to uncover a method of investigation, scientific investigation, philosophical investigation, to get on a good grounding, to be able to see what those principles are that can lead us to making further breakthroughs, to kind of see the overview, not the technical details so much, but the overview of how we generate those breakthroughs. Because there's something that's associated with that idea of scientific and artistic breakthroughs that for most people seems to be very, very difficult to put their finger on, and something which it takes an attention which is sort of hard for people to follow, it seems. And it's not a flash in the pan kind of, as I was gently mocking earlier, of self-improvement or something like that. Ways to get ahead, ways to cure you what ails you. No, it's a method whereby you want to ensure that breakthroughs continue to happen, and that you don't get stuck in the weeds and the details, and you can see the long-term future. And that was the last point that I kind of tried to make last night, was what's the method? And firstly, in terms of this issue of religion, there is an idea of this idea of freedom, degree of freedom, that when you have a breakthrough of a significant sort that aids in the well-functioning of society, that breakthrough is based upon a method of investigation, a method of using hypothesis. The hypothesis that only humans are capable of generating, provably, and that we are unique. It is very, very important to emphasize that there are these unique qualities in the ordering, and not based on dog eat dog and war of each against all, but this idea of cooperation and betterment for the future generations, based on striving to make breakthroughs progress. There's a type of geometry and mathematics where I have attempted to at least point to. I think, again, one of the problems is mathematics in particular today is so abstract that you can spend your whole life working on some abstruse problem which doesn't you can say, well, I can work on this abstruse problem and it'll have some ramifications down the road for somebody because I put a lot of thought into it. And thought, of course, is what drives these breakthroughs. Well, I don't know. Is it mere puzzles this idea that your mind must be active. This is a meme today, that you have to keep yourself active, keep your mind going, don't get old, be youthful. And that's some sort of panacea. But it's really not. It's not the method of just doing good puzzles that is the basis for scientific hypothesis. Its basis is firstly based on sound foundations. One of the things that really moved me in my youth I was confronted with the philosophy of Leibniz. And the idea at his time about what reality is, really. I mean, Descartes was basically saying, how can I know that there's anything out there beyond myself that's real? What is reality? And he says, well, I can think. I know I can think. So I'm seeing myself thinking. Therefore, that's reality. It's the center of reality. That I know. And Leibniz looked at that. I mean, what went along with it, which, in the case of Descartes, was the issue of motion, and that you can encapsulate it in the idea of momentum. That something that's moving and has mass has this energy, momentum, and then that can be collide with something else, and you can have hard interactions. This is kind of a refinement, isn't it, of the idea of a war of each against self. Not necessarily a war, just particles colliding with each other. It's kind of like the idea of dead, inert stuff that's out there that has no will, just dissipation, entropy. So that was Descartes. And he kind of said, well, I can see all this stuff, therefore I know that that's a reality. I think about these things, therefore I am. And Leibniz said, that's not, wait a second. First of all, I can show you that all of these things that you're talking about bumping into each other, all these objects, can be divided. They're not whole. They're not something that you can actually base a philosophy, because they are all divisible. They're not, from that standpoint, you're not on firm ground here. So if you're going to base your knowledge of these things, which are all divisible, there's a real problem, because that leaves you on very shaky ground. And there was a lot that proceeded from that, but one of the critical things, which I've come back to just recently, is this idea of indivisibility of the soul, or you want to call it mind. It doesn't really matter what term you use. You can use whatever term you want, but the indivisibility of an entity that cannot be broken down further is not inert in that sense. That, as opposed to just this idea of experiencing consciousness. To this very day, in fact, those people that preach that we have to find out what consciousness is, that's just a refinement of Descartes. Consciousness. It's a mystery. One of the mysteries. Descartes even went so far, I believe, as to say that the basis for consciousness was in the pineal gland. It's a magical precept that it's a thing. It's a thing in itself. To unearth Kant's idea of the thing in itself. What is it? It's a mystery. We can't go beyond. But so Leibniz said, no, I can show you that the I, the soul, the me-ness, is not divisible. And not only as a human mind not divisible, but all of life in one way or another, it's every single layer of it is indivisible. Life itself, as opposed to these inert things. So he was setting up right there a stark division. And what I've time and time again have been trying to bring out is that in terms of the mathematics of this, Georg Cantor developed the principle of the transfinites. The idea that there are different types of infinity, different what he called cardinalities, orderings of infinity, and that there's a greater or lesser infinity, which sounds absurd in fact, it's kind of one of these things that you can think, well, maybe this is just one of these problems that don't really make sense. And it's, again, you could say to me, well, you were just talking a moment ago or two about not just going into solving some sort of abstruse problems. Well, not really, because it's not that he didn't solve. He did solve these ideas, and they're very clear and unique, and no one's ever proven that they're wrong, which is that you can show, if I have a fraction counting infinity, that it can't map one-to-one onto numbers which are of a higher density, higher order. Absolutely. And you can go through the proofs of that. You can get them. They're not, it can take some study, but the principle is what I want to bring forward as being more important than the mere proof of what Cantor was talking about. Because the principle is brought to bear in this distinction that Leibniz made between the inert realm, the dead things that can be divided ad infinitum, and the unities that cannot be life. It can't be life if it can be, and it's no longer life, or it just has a quality of wholeness, which is of a higher order. So I think I'm going to leave this video at that level. Hopefully it will engender some questions that'll be worthwhile. I mean, like I said at the beginning of this, I'm kind of trying to figure out whether it's even worth anything to put these videos out there. Is it something that is there some reason that in the midst of all of these channels and chaos and information society, anything like this can even get through? Hopefully, it will in one way or another, and I can go on and maybe try to explicate. I mean, I'm constantly being told you have to slow down, you have to, what's the word that people use? Unpack. You have to unpack things. Don't make it so abstruse and so abstract, and unpack it all. I think they're looking at what I'm saying in terms of the principles of design of science and mathematics and geometry as being just too hard. I think that's a lot of the problem with people have, is that they'll look at these ideas and just put them in a category of being too hard to concentrate on. Hopefully they're not. Hopefully it'll get through to a few people and it will spark something and engender some collaboration. And this video and the others that I've made, and maybe some more that I'll make in the future, will have bear some fruit. So thanks for listening if you did, and if you get it, I appreciate it, and I hope you can take what I've said and use it to improve your own understanding and maybe communication with others as to the difference between a warrior hunter-gatherer society and one that's based on cooperation and the principles of true growth and of true betterment of society. Thanks for listening.